The story behind the making of an album released 50 years ago, arguably considered one of the greatest of all time, Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. It's coming up next on Booked on Rock.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. I'm Eric Senich. We have a returning guest, Sean Egan. His latest book is titled Bruce Springsteen and Born to Run 50 Years. Sean, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. So before we get into the album, when did you first hear Born to Run and what was your reaction?
Well, I came to Born to Run late, actually, because my first Springsteen album was The River. And absolutely love that album, still do, in fact. So obviously once you get into somebody, you start checking out their back catalogue. So I came to that album the wrong way round, because obviously The River was 1980, Born to Run 75. But once you start listening to somebody's back catalogue, you start getting everything in context. And Born to Run, that sort of paved the way for The River. But the interesting thing is, and I didn't start thinking about this until I was writing the book, I think Born to Run created political rock. Because if you think about it, there wasn't really much in the way in rock history that posited rock and roll as explicitly proletarian. It was certainly always anti-authoritarian. But there weren't really that many songs before that album that were class-based rock. So Bruce really invented the entire genre with that album.
You write in the book, quote, although the album was a massive bestseller and is by common consensus a cast iron classic, it easily could have never been made. Talk about where Bruce was in terms of his standing with his record label, Columbia, and the odds he was facing at the time he was planning this, what would be his third studio album.
Well, he made two albums in 1973, Greetings from Asbury Park and The Wild, the Innocent and the E Street Shuffle. And they were both promising albums, but they hadn't really sold many copies. And he was really hamstrung by the terrible hype that surrounded his first album. He was being hailed as the new Dylan, which a lot of people were in those days, because Dylan was semi-retired and everybody wanted a new poet laureate of rock and roll. And he hates hype, always has done. And of course, the public hates it as well to some extent. So when they checked out his first album and found that it was merely promising rather than a classic, as so many Bob Dylan albums already were, then there was bound to be a little bit of a backlash. The Wild, the Innocent and the E Street Shuffle, it didn't really advance him much. I mean, you could feel him experimenting a bit. It was a quite jazzy album, so it's unique in his canon in that respect. But Columbia Records were now beginning to feel, well, maybe we're wasting our time on this person and we should just let him go. And they actually said to him, we need you to record a single, which was a nonsense idea because he was an albums artist. So it was like he was being put through this humiliating process of being forced to audition for his own record company before they would deign to put out another album by him. So, yeah, that was a terrible position for him to be at that point in time. And it could so easily have been the last thing that he ever recorded.
To understand the songs that make up Born to Run, it's important to understand Bruce's background. And you do cover that in the opening chapter. And the chapter is titled Growing Up, the Context. While the music is big, Bruce came from small beginnings. Talk about that and how it influenced the songs on this album.
Well, one contemporary of his described him as dirt poor. So he was always, he came from a family that was always scrimping and saving. And he had a loving relationship with his mother, quite a difficult relationship with his father, who he only later on in life realized was probably mentally ill, even at that point of his life. So he was from the wrong side of the tracks, as it were. And that kind of stuff informs his songs. And it's not merely being the wrong side of the tracks, it's also being the wrong side of the river, because he's from New Jersey, and like a lot of people in New Jersey feel or felt then, that to him was Nowheresville. And whenever he travelled to New York on the other side of the river, he just felt this is the kind of hustle and bustle and glamour that he really wanted to be part of his life, but wasn't when he was stuck in the boondocks of New Jersey. So yeah, you can hear all of that in his songs. Not so much on his first two albums, which they do show a lot of street life, but in a very stylized way. But once he gets into Born to Run, especially the title track, he's really exploring the despair of people who feel that because they don't have great prospects, that they're maybe not valid as human beings, which is a terrible situation to be in.
Let's get to the tracks now. You write, quote, Born to Run starts in a rather peculiar way. Expand on that in terms of that opening track, Thunder Road, and what Bruce has said about why he chose that particular song to open the album.
Well, he felt that just the tone of that song had the hallmarks of a fresh day, a new beginning, and therefore it was appropriate that it would start the album. Now, that makes it its own kind of sense, but sonically it makes no sense at all, because it's a sort of meandering song. It doesn't really have a proper chorus, and it's got an instrumental break, but it's in the oddest place. It's right at the end where Clarence plays his sax solo to bring things to a close. So it is a peculiar start to the album, but then again, it works. And part of the reason that it works, of course, is that having heard the album so many times over the years, to us it would now sound odd if it didn't start like that. It just becomes a natural start to a sort of beloved sequence of songs.
Yeah, it's an odd instrumental break as well. You point that out.
Yeah, I mean, Clarence, he was a sort of throwback to the 50s. By the 1970s, the saxophone was not a big part of rock and roll. But Bruce brought that back. Partly it was, I think, because of his fondness for Clarence, fine instrumentalist though Clarence was. Bruce and Clarence Clemens were for a long time close as brothers. In fact, their girlfriends, when they first met, the two men's girlfriends used to laugh at them and accuse them of being gay because they spent so much time together.
Well, Thunder Road is a title taken from a 1956 Robert Mitchum thriller, which is a nod to Bruce's love of film noir. And it's probably one of the reasons, among the reasons why I'm a fan of Bruce, because I am a film noir fan. The next track, 10th Avenue Freeze Out. You say in many ways it's the most likable cut on the album, and add that recording artists writing about themselves is often a dubious proposition at best and unwise at worst. Talk about why you feel this song manages to sidestep any of the traps that can often come with this type of song.
Well, self-mythologizing is always a dubious proposition. I mean, one of my favorite bands of all time is The Clash. The Clash were always writing about themselves, whether it be Garageland or Last Gang in Town or Radio Clash. And because I love The Clash, you can sort of forgive them for it, but it's sort of preposterous because The Clash were unknown to the vast bulk of the public, and yet here they were talking about themselves as though they were significant cultural forces. And even the Beatles, who genuinely were a significant cultural force, you've got a song like The Ballad of John and Yoko, which is a great song, no denying it, but you're listening to that sometimes thinking, isn't this a bit self-absorbed? Especially the sort of the quite offensive comparison John Lennon makes between himself and a man who died in agony on the cross. That's a bit too far by anybody's, by even the most hardcore Beatle fans' standards. The thing about 10th Avenue Freeze Out is that it doesn't feel bogged down by that kind of egotism. I mean, Bruce feels like he's mocking himself at the same time as he's celebrating himself, bigging up himself, as we would say today. And it's actually quite a joyous track as well. I mean, that lovely brass section, it just rings so clean and crisp, and you can get with the idea that Bruce and the E Street Band are giants that the that the song sort of hints at, even though, of course, at the time they were pretty much unknown, simply because it is such a likable soundscape.
Track 3 on side 1 is Night, and there is a sadness that lies behind the joy Bruce portrays here in a song about a man working all day, the boss man giving him hell. He can't wait to get home and go for a ride. Springsteen admits to never having a day job, but he can tap into the everyday man so brilliantly. Some criticize him, but you say he can certainly relate as a young musician, barely getting by in those early days. That's something that he put a lot of work into, much like a day job.
Well, Bruce had never known anything other than poverty at that point in his life, whether it be as a child or as a young man whose job, as it was a very insecure one, being a wannabe rock star. And of course, he'd seen the effects of having a job that you hate doing. Every time he saw his father come home from work, his father was a very, very unfulfilled man, and that sort of misery seeped into the Springsteen household and Bruce's own psyche. So he was well qualified to write about the effects of unskilled labor, even if he never knew that experience personally.
And that last track on side 1 is Backstreets. The shortest song on the album is Night at 3 minutes, and it's followed by the 6.5-minute Backstreets. The narrator's ex-girlfriend is named Terry, and Bruce seems to have a liking for female characters with 2-syllable first names ending in Y. You point this out: Bobby, Candy, Cindy, Janie, Kitty, Rosie, Sandy, Sherry, Terry, Wendy, or most commonly Mary. I think I covered them all. You also point out that the song could have been shortened up. Is this your least favorite track from the album?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, when he goes into the refrain at the end, hiding on the back streets, you sort of think to yourself after a few repeats of that, well, you made your point, Bruce. You don't need to go on and on about it. And the girl's name thing, it must sound peculiar to Americans, but it sounds very peculiar to British people, because we hear these names and they sound so cornily all American. They sound like the kind of names that you'd only hear in a movie rather than in real life. But again, it's one of those things that you come to love because they're so familiar with Bruce. It's like his trademark, even if it is a slightly comical one. But there are good qualities to Hiding on the Back Streets. It's quite a vulnerable song. He's talking about that feeling that you have when you're just left school and you're thinking about your future and you're not sure you're ever going to amount to anything. So there's a sort of quivering vulnerability on the cusp of your adult life.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
It's intermission time.
Sean Egan is the author of Bruce Springsteen and Born to Run 50 Years. We flipped the album over to side 2. It opens with Bruce's breakthrough song, the title track, Born to Run. And you note that it was inspired greatly by the Animals cover of House of the Rising Sun, along with We've Got to Get Out of This Place and It's My Life. You write, quote, "We're back in the same psychological territory as Night, but it has greater impact."
Yeah, the Animals were one of the few people who made proletarian rock before Born to Run, even though they didn't actually write the songs. But songs like It's My Life and We've Got to Get Out of This Place, they do sum up the sort of despair and the misery and the lack of fulfillment and the yearning ambition for something more in life of a lot of working class people, especially younger people. And Bruce taps into that. He I think the most interesting thing about the Born to Run song is that that was the song which he wrote for the single that Columbia insisted that he make. And he absolutely overhauled everything about his style with that song because he said to his manager, I want to do a Phil Spector type record. And his manager said to him, well, Bruce, there's like only 20 words in a Phil Spector song, whereas there's dozens and hundreds in your songs, because if you listen to those first two albums, his songs are very florid. The words are bursting over the margins of the songs almost. So he took his manager's advice, and he wrote this very stripped down lyric. It's a great lyric, and it says a lot, but it was very spare by his standards, because he was known as a bit of a poet, and that's where part of the new Dylan tag came from. And when you think about it, that is an incredible achievement to just change your style overnight like that. And he never really went back to that florid style that you hear on those first two albums. That was a new beginning for him, which he stuck to.
And the next track, She's the One. Bo Diddley was a strong influence on this song. You say Bruce falls short lyrically on this track, but you praise the musicianship on this song, with Roy Bittan's piano work being the highlight.
Yeah, I mean, Bo Diddley, of course, famous for the shaving a haircut 2 bits rhythm, sometimes known as ham bone, which he didn't really invent, but it certainly became his trademark. And Bruce decides to do his own Bo Diddley beat song with that. The lyric, it doesn't fully work. It's a little bit awkward. That line about she knows that it kills me, kills being the rhyme with the preceding line, but then he adds this feeble me. And it's all a bit awkward, and it's a bit incongruous in the context of this album, which is all about perfectionism and doing things over and over again. I think he could have put that lyric through a few more drafts before it was ready to be aired to the world. But yeah, it's the E Street Band, which really came together with this album. Because he lost 2 members after the last album, and he needed to add Roy Bittan and Max Weinberg, the drummer. So with a great band like that, even a mediocre thing like She's the One could be turned into an enjoyable few minutes.
Interesting piece of trivia: Max is not on the title track.
Yeah, that's the only song that Max doesn't drum on the album, and he never really could replicate the drum sounds of that title track. But I think history shows that Max was a very valuable addition to the E Street Band. We couldn't imagine the E Street Band without him, really.
Yeah, and I'm drawing a blank on who was the original drummer. Boom Carter.
Yeah.
Ernest Boom Carter.
Boom, because the police came round to his place one day after reports of gunfire, and it turned out that it was just Carter banging on his drums.
The next track, another film noir title, Meeting Across the River. Talk about how this track is, quote, more static geographically than the other material on the album, yet it's more layered and more of a true narrative than any other track.
Well, it's basically a conversation between the narrator and his friend, and they're talking. The narrator is basically talking to his friend, saying, "I hear there's an easy heist over the river," and it becomes apparent during the course of this song that what a nasty piece of work this narrator is. And this is the opposite of the narrator in Born to Run, the song, who might also be a loser, but he doesn't really have that nastiness to him. This is a lowlife who doesn't care who he hurts, whether it be his girlfriend, whose radio he's just hocked, or whether it be the people who he's going to planning to terrorize when he does this stick up that he's talking about. And very noir in the sense that I mean, Bruce is only on it in the sense of a vocal. Instead, you get a very spare, jazzy soundscape, which sounds sort of like the soundtrack to every noir movie that you've ever seen.
And then you ask the question, how to end an album like Born to Run? We know he chooses the epic track Jungle Land. So tell me how you feel about that choice to end the album.
I don't think it could have ended any other way, really, in the sense that you couldn't put that track in any other place. It's an absolute epic in the same way that Highway 61 by Bob Dylan has to end with Desolation Row. So this one has to end with Jungle Land. And it's basically, it's a street opera. It's a little bit stylized in the way of West Side Story. You can imagine the protagonists of this vista doing pirouettes as they deliver their lines, but at the same time, it has got a certain grittiness to it, and it's a beautiful piece musically. It feels like an opera. It's got several movements. It's got contrasting musical styles. And it truly sounds epic.
It has its critics, though. You point that out in the book. What are the criticisms, and why do you say they're missing the point?
Well, they Bob Geldof famously said about Bob Dylan, he writes fiction. The Magic Rat did not cross over the New Jersey River in his sleek machine. You know, he's quoting lines from Jungle Land in that. And you can sort of see what he means because it does feel very stylized. Some people actually like that about the song. But the thing is, Bruce was inventing political rock as he was going along. He had very few antecedents to provide a template for him. And Bob, of course, was in the new wave that came right after him. And punk and new wave did create new rules for political rock. One of which, of course, was that everything should be gritty and naturalistic, and that by definition militated against the kind of bombast you hear in Jungle Land. But you have to say, would punk rock have happened without Born to Run? Because Born to Run, to a very great extent, made it possible.
The gatefold sleeve, one of the best. You say it's emblematic of the album's vivid and widescreen nature. That great shot of Bruce and saxophonist Clarence Clemens. This, you say, appears to have occurred more through serendipity than calculation. What's the story behind that gatefold sleeve? This usually was done for double albums, not single albums.
Yeah, he had to get special dispensation to make this one a gatefold sleeve. Because they were quite expensive to do. And he didn't really have much in mind for the album. He went to the photographic studio of Eric Miola, who was a photographer that he vaguely knew, and he just turned up in his street clothes. He was wearing a leather jacket with an Elvis Presley fan club button on it, and Clarence came with him. The only thing that Bruce knew that he wanted to do was to have something, a picture with him and Clarence in it, not the E Street Band and not Bruce on his own. So he was clearly trying to communicate something with that. And in fact, a lot of people must have been puzzled when they saw that album because he wasn't that well-known a person. A lot of people must have been wondering which one is Bruce, unthinkable as that seems today. But Miola took plenty of pictures. There's some fascinating outtakes from that session. But the one that we all became familiar with was Bruce leaning against Clarence while Clarence plays the sax. Bruce is actually standing on a box because he's quite a bit shorter than Clarence was. And So you only see Bruce on the front, but then you open the sleeve out, and there's saxophone. There's Clarence with his saxophone on the back cover. It's a very minimalist design. They're surrounded by white, just their two figures, and then there's the track listing on the back. But it works perfectly because you see that sleeve, you're intrigued by it, and of course you never forget it, and it's passed the test of so many iconic sleeves. It's been much parodied. There's plenty of people who have imitated that album sleeve, including Sesame Street.
That's right. One thing I was surprised to read, I always assumed that the critics loved this album right out of the gate, but that wasn't the case right away. What was the response by critics?
Well, it got a mixed reception because, first of all, Born to Run is very much a self-conscious epic and a self-conscious classic. In fact, when Bruce was recording the single, the title track single, he actually said, if I'm gonna be forced to record a single, I'm gonna make the greatest rock and roll record you ever heard. You know, so he was aiming high with this album, and you can hear that on the album. This man is clearly trying to create a classic. Very often he succeeds, but some people don't like that. Of course, they somehow feel that there's some kind of pure process involved in making music, and it's got nothing to do with personal ambition or avarice or egotism. Of course, it's got everything to do with those things, as well as artistic inspiration. And it's also absolutely dripping with rock and roll self-referentialism, whether it be the Spectre-ish production, whether it be the Bo Diddley track, whether it be the nods to like in Thunder Road, where he quotes Roy Orbison. You know, it's that kind of we would call that meta these days, but that kind of meta approach or postmodernism, whatever you want to call it, it wasn't that common in those days, and to a lot of critics that just came across as a bit cute.
Much more than a deep dive into the tracks in this book, you get into the reception of the album, the tour, Bruce getting on the cover of Time and Newsweek, a chapter on Bruce meeting Bob Dylan, Phil Spector, almost Elvis, how Bruce boosted and altered the development of an entire genre known as Heartland rock. Beautiful color photos. So there's so much more in this book for maybe the new fan of Bruce, but also the longtime fans. This is something to really add as part of your collection. Bruce Springsteen and Born to Run, 50 years, out now. Find it wherever books are sold. Look for it at your nearest bookstore. You can also find your nearest independent bookstore at thebookedonrock.com. Sean Egan, thank you so much for doing this. I know we're 5 hours apart, so you're doing this interview very late. So I really appreciate you stepping up and giving another fantastic interview. I had you on last time for your Bob Dylan book, so thank you for coming back on.
No problem. Good to talk to you.
That's it. It's in the books.